sure everyone's familiar with the weblog by now. I mean, it's a chronologically ordered series of notes, effectively. And here you can see I've written some stuff about the hosting that we're offering for Elg at the moment, and we're also running a logo competition. So I've written something about that.
What kind of hosting are you offering?
Well, at the moment, we're sort of open to negotiation, but for people who want to sort of mess around with Elg and try Elg out, but don't necessarily have the technical skills or the resources to host it themselves, if they email us, we can talk about giving them a gig of space and setting the software up for them.
Very kind of you.
On one of our servers. Well, we want people to try it out.
Yeah.
And you can see furthermore under the weblog post, there's another series of keywords which you can also click on, and you can see there are 2 comments. If I click on those and scroll down, you'll see someone's asked about the hosting program, and I've replied, saying email us at system@elg.net and we'll discuss, which is what you should do if anyone's interested. And so I've got a whole series of these weblog posts that stretch back months and months since November, since we launched the site. You will also see that on the sidebar I've got a concept called Friends. It's listing 8 of my friends here. In fact, I'm connected to a lot more people. When you find other people's, once you learn about someone else's profile now, you can mark them as a friend and set up a connection. And one of the things you can do once you've done that is click on Friends Weblog and see all the things that they've written about. I happen to be at the top, but then there's Dave, who is also writing about the same sorts of things. We've got a weblog for Elg News, and we've got some other people. And, perhaps you want to learn about more people, so we've also added a link to see the latest posts from everybody in the system. This is basically, this is just listing by chronology. It's not particularly intelligent, but it can be interesting just to keep up with what people you're interested in have to say. You can also, however, I'm going to get into the keywords here. Dave, if you think I'm missing anything out, please jump in. But if I click on Elg, for example, down here, I can see all my other weblog posts that have the keyword Elg. I can see other users who have weblog posts in the category Elg. I can see profiles where the interests include Elg. And if someone had listed Elg in likes and dislikes, I'd see those too. Luckily, nobody has listed Elg in dislikes. There I can see files or folders, which I'll get into in a bit, in the category Elg. And it will also suggest both other keywords and other users whose names are similar to Elg.
It's worth mentioning at this point that what we're finding is one of the keys within Elg is to build your own communities. And there's the functionality which Ben will get to soon on how you can actually form, if you like, a physical community, but you can also create ad hoc communities, because all of that search that Ben has just done there is all tied together through RSS. So you could actually, if you put that RSS feed into your reader, then you are in effect, you can follow, say, developments that happen on a particular tag, like ePortfolios. So you only want to see the stuff in Elg that happens based around ePortfolios and so forth. So it's a way to build ad hoc communities, which is quite interesting.
That's right. If I've clicked on Dave's picture there to see weblog posts by him, you'll notice that the screen looks quite different. That's because everyone in Elg has the ability to set a theme. They can control to a certain extent how everything looks. They still have all the same functionality, same menu items and so on, but they can set a basic style for the page to suit their needs and sort of fit their personality. So I'm going to flip back, and so we've covered weblog posts, and those can be linked through keywords, and Dave's talked about ad hoc communities. You can also have files and upload files to the system. if I click on my file storage, it says that I've got 14 files uploaded, and I've got 3 subfolders. I've got one for photographs, one called My Hidden Folder, and one for documents. If I click on documents and then click on the folder marked papers, you'll see the 2 PDF papers that have sparked off the ELG project. And these also have keywords attached to them. And so, for example, the creation of a learning landscape paper has the learning landscape keyword, and if I click on learning landscape, I can see everyone interested in learning landscape, and people who've written about the learning landscape and so on. And this is I think one of the big strengths of the ELG software is the ability to search across these keywords and find other people talking about the same sorts of things. In the future, you will also be able to search across different installations of the ELG software across the same keyword and see what other people on other sites have to say about the same things.
So all of the separate installations of ELG online are going to be connected in some way?
Yes, we're working towards that. So you'll be able to search across them and so on, which is, we think a pretty unique feature, and we should have that in a couple of weeks.
Sorry, Ben. I was just going to say it was worth just pointing out there as well. Searching, it's not just searching for other people; it's also for resources, and that's kind of why we attach keywords to these files that you've uploaded. So it's also for people, but also resources. And as this becomes multi-node, and you can search across different installations, that should widen the scope of material that a learner will be able to search and find based on an interest they have. Sorry, Ben.
No, that's an important addition. I guess I should talk a little bit more about access privileges before I carry on, because I mentioned it a little bit in the profile, but every object within ELG, so every weblog post, every file you upload, every folder, has access privileges associated with it. So you can say you want it to be public. You can say you just want to keep it literally to yourself and have it be completely private. You can limit it to certain communities. And you can create groups which are essentially filters of your friends. And so if I create a new group called, I'm creating one just called test here just to illustrate the point. And then I'll add Dave and pick a random user. Katie Wilson, I'll add those to the group. And then whenever I create a new weblog post or upload a file or so on, I can select the group test, and only Dave and Katie Wilson and myself will be able to see those things. Which means not only can I make the public posts about ELG hosting and so on, but I can also upload some of my more private thoughts and be secure in the knowledge that only the people I want to see them can see them.
And what we're finding is a further use from this is, for example, if you have an instructor-student a relationship in here where the student, me as a learner or student, I can upload, say, an essay, a paper I've written. I can put my reflections based on that in my blog post, attach those privileges so that I know that only my instructor will be able to see both my paper and my reflective comment.
Wow, it's an amazing level of functionality for a pretty light program.
And actually, that's the thing that amazes me about the program, having played around with it for the last couple of weeks, is just how light you've been able to keep it, how easy it is to install, and it's even though you're at the 0.2 sort of version, and you guys are talking about all these changes you're working on, it's still really usable right now.
I think a lot of that's to. I mean, Ben's the lead developer on this, so that's down to his hard work. But we've been quite lucky, although it is 0.2 release. We have had a lot of useful input. We've got a couple of other developers who are also helping, and I think this is a little a little side. But when we started this project, we had to make the decision at how early will we open this up and let people come in and contribute. And I think that's been one of the strengths. We chose to go quite early, which a lot of people suggested we shouldn't do because it can throw people off. There'll be bugs, things won't work. But I think we found by opening up the software, getting people in testing it, getting people's opinions has made a big difference. And I would recommend it. It's quite. I think that's we got to thank people that have helped out quite a bit.
I think that goes back to your whole philosophy, though. I think there really is a power in the process. And I think having the users being part of the process of development is essential for this kind of thing.
I couldn't agree more. I think if you forget who your target users are going to be and build this, if we just shut ourselves in a room and build this, you could guarantee it won't satisfy any of their needs. So yeah, I would agree with that completely.
What kind of feedback are you getting so far from both users and developers? What are they most excited about? What do they want improved or changed or developed?
I think the biggest there's two things that are coming through, and one of them is definitely usability. I mean, Ben, when he goes on to the next, he'll show you the next. There's a whole section of more functionality that he's going to get to, but the big problem we have and what users are conveying back to us is they're logging in and they're not realizing all of the potential things they can do, and we do realize that's down to our user interface design and help files and documentation, and so that's a big one. We really have to get more documentation and more support and make sure that the interface lets people know exactly what it is they can do. The second thing from developers' point of view, especially those that are making decisions at higher education institutions, is how this system is going to interoperate with their existing architecture, their existing systems, and this is going to be a key. If ELG or systems like ELG are going to be adopted by higher education, they're going to have to be compatible or interoperable with systems that universities are currently using. So I would say those are probably the two biggest things that we get hit with.
Are you talking about compatibility with server software or with other blogging kinds of software?
Mostly, actually, with their learning environments. It's the biggest ones is either WebCT, Blackboard, or Moodle. And out of those three, I'd be fairly confident that we can get this integrated nicely with Moodle, as they're both PHP based. But WebCT and Blackboard is going to be a little trickier. But we are looking. That's another thing, to build hooks so that and another factor of that is single sign-on, which is another thing that we're currently working on and hope will be rolled out soon. That all these things will aid institutions that would like to try out ELG to do so.
How difficult is it to integrate with commercial products like WebCT and Blackboard as opposed to open source like Moodle?
I think that's actually the person to ask for that is maybe you. Ben's had his personal experience working with WebCT was a VLE of choice in Edinburgh, and Ben had the task of dealing with it. So
It's very interesting because a lot of these commercial products, I mean, obviously the impetus is not to share knowledge of how these things work. And so it can be very hard. I mean, my experiences with WebCT was quite painful, to tell you the honest truth. And I mean, I know that there are, certainly when I was working with it, I'm not sure if this is still the case, there were two editions. Basically, there was the standard and the enterprise version of WebCT. And the enterprise version was much easier to...
Okay. Would you like to continue with your tour, Ben?
Okay. I will... The one big area of functionality I haven't touched is communities. And communities... I mean, Dave talked about ad hoc communities where you can everything's linked by essentially a keyword, and you can see all the weblog posts and files associated with that keyword. Communities is sort of a more formal way of creating those links. If I click on the Elg features community, you'll see that it has everything that a standard user has. It's got a little picture of itself, it's got a bio, and it's got interests. And rather than friends, it's got members, people who explicitly join up to the community, and once they've marked themselves as a member, they can post the community weblog, which is a single weblog containing posts from anyone who's a member of the community. They can also upload to the communal file store and create folders and sort of collaborate in the communal file space. Here on elg.net, we've got a link to a community wiki, which isn't a standard feature of the software, but really takes 10 minutes to add, and that's another piece of functionality that can be enabled in Elg. It's essentially a way to collaborate in a formal way. You know, you've got RSS feeds for the community. If you are a member of the community, all the posts from all the community users within that community weblog appear on your friends page, so you can keep track of everything about a certain topic. I think we see this being used, you know, in several ways. There could be, we've got one here for Elg features, as I say, which is discussion of what we should include and maybe features that aren't working properly and so on. In a learning environment, perhaps there'd be a community for a class group, and they could all discuss about the learning that they were doing. There might be one for just sort of a club at an institution, a loose group of friends, everyone interested in Radiohead. So there's all kinds of different applications for it, but it's just a way. It's a way for people to get together and collaborate in a structured way.
It's kind of moving, if we to take that a little further, if Elg's it's split into two. You've got the individual, and then you've got the collective, and you've got your individual profile with your interests, whatever it is that you're doing, and you can interact with that. You can also, once you meet or a group of people you want to collaborate with, this is where you move to the community. And we've been getting a lot of people asking about the potential of using this for research collaboration, because it's I suppose we've all been there where you're writing a joint paper, for example, with people in different countries, and you're emailing back and forth, and before you know it, you have 4 or 5 versions of the same paper, and it gets messy. Whereas this way, because it's worth noting that if you're in the community, you can also use the access privileges to only make your blog posts or any of the files available to those community members. So this doesn't have to be public. You could just use it to collaborate amongst yourself, and then when you wanted to disseminate out some findings, for example, you could put a blog post up and make that publicly accessible, which is quite a nice feature.
Yeah, I actually am trying to use it for exactly that, because I've been looking for a feature for years that would allow me to do an online sort of dissertation with multiple voices, where they could all have a position and I could actually assume multiple voices and allow it to connect, and then also have people join and have the conversation develop naturally. Because in so much of old-style research, you end up deciding before you start where you're going to end up. And I think, much like Elg itself, this allows a theory to go where it should go, and where the sort of group mind ends up bringing it.
That's right, and that ties right back into why we opened up this from an early stage in development. Because you're right, it takes on, it lets the software we feel go where it should go, like what you were saying, and yeah, and I use this for my PhD as well. I mean, I've got I have some interactions going on with people, and it's private, so only us can see it. But it's proving quite useful as even just as a place to store resources as well, and thoughts, and get other people's thoughts on what I'm doing. So it's probably worth noting as well that with communities, at this stage, if you create a community, anybody can join it. There's going to be 3 states for each community. There's going to be public, private, or you have to ask for an invite. As it's a relatively new feature, at the moment, if I create a community, if any of you guys find it, you can just come create and become a member. But in the next release, or in the next stage of development rather, when I set up my community, I can decide if this is going to be a private one, so it's only going to be those that I select. If it's going to be an invite situation, not us inviting people because we feel that'll be too big potential for spamming, but rather if you wanted to join, you could click join, and then I'll be notified, and I can verify your application if you like, or public like they are now.
I think this is a question that certainly we've had regarding Skype, about social rules and about regulations and about how all this works. Do you guys have a list of sort of general regulations that you guys have set up, or sort of social guidelines that you guys have found that have worked for people?
Not really. I mean, it's interesting as people come. You suddenly get hit with questions. People coming through on their blogs, and even we've had people going right back to using the term friends, and we're not really friends and all of that. But even just how you use these things, I'm not sure. I think social networking is growing so fast, and yeah, it's a good question. I'm not sure. Do you have any thoughts on that, Ben?
I think any community that develops, and you can have multiple simultaneous communities. I'm talking about sort of fluffy communities as opposed to the community functionality. Any community that develops is going to develop its own rules, and I think in many ways it's best to step back and just watch and see what people choose for themselves.
Have you had to censor or remove any content?
No, so far we haven't. Well, I mean, but lately Ben had to somebody did post up song lyrics, for example, from a bunch of records, which are obviously copyrighted. And as far as it goes for files, we do have a disclaimer whenever you upload it if they click the disclaimer. But really, I don't think we want to end up policing this site, with the exception of obviously gratuitous material, but it's a hard one to call, because at what level do you just let people get on with it, or do you interfere? And so far we've just stepped back and we've not had any problems really.
Well, I think that speaks very well of the Elg community. How many members are there of the main elg.net community, and who are they? How have they come to you?
There's 1,251 at the moment, and I think the majority of them are e-learning professionals or e-learning administrators, or connected to e-learning somehow within either high school or higher education. And I think that the only way they've been finding this is through word of mouth, through the blogging communities. I mean, we've been lucky that people like Stephen Downs and George Siemens and stuff from Canada, well-known bloggers, have talked about this. So I think that's bringing in traffic, but it's still a relatively low number, but we're hoping that will increase.
I should say that we've also got a fair number of students in here as well, who some of them have been brought in for learning projects that they've been involved with, but some of them have come on just of their own accord because they wanted to find a place to blog. And I think that's kind of cool if people are actually using it as a genuine blogging tool off their own backs. And
the open source stuff, I mean, that's probably it's around about 500 downloads. So I mean, it's starting to pick up a little bit.
I don't want to cut you off if your presentation or your tour was not finished. Is there anything even more to show us?
Probably the theming. If you want to go to the...
Okay, if I return to... Alright, this is me, and I can see there's a menu option marked Templates, which will shortly be renamed Themes, and if I click there, there's a list of predefined templates and some personal ones that I've written as well. What you can do, if you know your HTML, which admittedly not everyone does, you can go right in and you can actually alter the way it looks right down on the code level. If not, and I think most people are in this category, you can have a look at some of the templates that we provided or other people have provided, and you can just pick another one and select new template, and as if by magic everything looks different. I mean, you can see obviously the common link between them all, but it's like a new skin, effectively. Here's one of Vancouver, which I'll do as well. I quite like this one.
it's worth noting that we are at the moment you have to be able to go in and know your HTML to edit and create your own template. However, again, this is on the to-do list, and we're looking at various editors to help with this.
I think
Actually,
as we're oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry, I was just going to mention as well that that's the same with blogging. We're also currently we're both looking at putting an editor, a WYSIWYG editor, so for those for their blogging, if they require it.
That's good. That's exactly the question I was going to ask you. What else is on the to-do list?
Well, there's quite a lot. We've got a back-end admin panel coming along for site administrators who want a usable, sort of graphic interface to administering users and so on.
Another big one is internationalization, which, because we've got quite a large number of people in Europe now interested in setting up small pilots, this is going to have to be LiveJournal, Flickr. There's lots of great stuff going on. They get into their institution, and I'm not speaking for all here. I mean, but certainly ones that a lot that I've seen and been involved with, and the systems are quite dry. And that's not to say they're not good and they don't have a good function or purpose for what the institution wants. But I think if we can help through ELG over the next couple of years, just get some of these really, kind of cool internet technologies that the people are using into more of the learning environment in higher education, and secondary schools and stuff, I think that would be a good achievement.
This is a great transition into a question that I wanted to ask. And you talk about in your presentation paper proposal about the two nodes of ePortfolios and the way that there's one direction going towards assessment and another direction that's going towards what you guys call deep learning. Can you sort of flesh that out for me?
Yeah, I think what we're there was another I put up a blog post recently about this where I was looking at the ePortfolio spectrum and basically looking at the tools that exist, and I guess the biggest thing was on one end I put OSPI, which are you guys familiar with? Well, OSPI is the open source portfolio initiative. It's a big funded project for I think Merlot funded. I'm not 100% sure about that. Anyway, but that's probably the widest used ePortfolio system, but it's very much a top down approach, and it's set up, I think, from an institutional point of view with no regard at all for the learner's perspective. And I've done a lot of work working with learners. That's what my PhD is based on, and I have yet to meet one that's had a good experience using it. However, I'm not then saying that ELG on the other side of the spectrum is the answer either. I actually think the answer for that is going to lie in between. But what we're trying to get at with the more deep learning approach is to have learners actually thinking about not just filling in the boxes and putting in the checklists like they would do, I've completed this task, I've completed this assignment, but rather instead of thinking in those silos, to actually think more conceptually across what it is that they're doing, what they're trying to achieve. And by using current tools like the blogging, for example, which even if it's private, it's still reflections, and to actually sit there and think about more what it is that you're learning, not just what it is that you have to learn. And we're hoping that this, it's still early days, and if somebody that's worth checking out for this is Helen Barrett. She's done quite a lot of work in this area. But this is what we're trying to think. It's trying to get people to look at their learning in a slightly different manner, rather than just all the checkboxes and checklists. I'm not saying either one's better or worse. It's just a different approach.
And when I sort of go through that's one of the things that fascinates me about ELK is because it gives so much power to the student. I am concerned about the transition period for me in introducing these kinds of concepts into classes. I find there's that dead period where students kind of go, but what do you want me to do? Can you tell me what I'm supposed to do? How do you think can you think of go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to come in.
Oh no, I was just how do you think that an instructor can solve that? Because a lot of the people who are listening to us are teachers, and I think that this is a great it's a great tool that they can use. But how can they get past that sort of initial resistance period, do you think?
That's a very good question, and it's also it's a difficult one to answer, and I don't think it applies only to ELG and ELG's approach. I think this is common with any type of new approach that's introduced into the teaching and learn environment. And I guess the first thing I should say is we're not by any means saying that this is a replacement or this is something that should be done in place of what currently goes on. In fact, quite the opposite. This is just something that I think could be introduced as a enhancement, and it's worth pointing out as well. This type of learning is not going to work for everybody. There'll be some people who really get into it, like the social side of things, like having the reflective type of learning and thinking, and there'll be others that absolutely hate it. So it's a good question you ask, and I'm not sure. I think what we need to do is over the next sort of 6 months is get some good examples of people using not just ELG but also blogs, wikis, social networking within a classroom environment, and see if we can all learn from this, because it is still early days. And you're right, there is that sort of, even with e-portfolios that I've been doing, students come in and they're told, right, you have to do this e-portfolio, do X, Y, and Z, and they don't really see why. It's like, well, what's the point? And there has to be a good reason for them to use it.
How much has ELG gotten out there in the wild with people putting in their own installations and using it in the classroom or for whatever learning purposes?
It's really hard to say, because I mean, there's sort of the temptation to sneak something in, so that we can keep track of them all, but obviously that would be evil and wrong. And so, therefore, we're sort of restricted to, hoping that people get in contact with us, or having a look at the downloads on SourceForge, of which there have been hundreds, and, doing Google searches, basically, to see what we got. There are quite a few, and I know of quite a few, big ones that are going to spring up over the next couple of months. There's lots of small little sites as well, and we get a trickle of emails every day asking how to set something up, or how to, advice on this or that from all kinds of different people. So there are quite a few out there. Quite how many? Not entirely sure.
It's worth, I think after this next semester that's starting, there's going to be quite a few major universities are going to now. I mean, I can't. We've been told not to say until it's university politics or whatever, but until it's actually cleared. But that'll be quite nice, because I think once a couple of big institutions start piloting with this, depending on and then we can capture their success or failures, because we're going to be working closely with them. I think that'll feed back nicely into the development cycle.
How soon do you guys finish your PhDs, and what happens after that? No pressure.
I think I've got another. Well, supervisor will say you got to get 2.5 years, but maybe 2.5 to 3 years. But I'm only a part-time PhD student. I work full-time and do the PhD in the evenings, so it's still a while to go.
Is your day job related to this at all?
It's sometimes. I mean, I do a lot of short contracts. I mean, it seems to be the way that it is here in higher education now. You just it's a lot of short contract work. So some contracts tie in nicely because they're looking exactly at something like e-portfolios or student perspective of some kind of e-learning tool, and other ones are not at all, and that's when it gets quite difficult.
Well, we are both very enthusiastic members of the ELG fan club, and very much look forward to seeing how things evolve, and we'll certainly be staying tuned.
Great. Well, yeah, your T-shirts will be in the mail.
Oh, that's great. Are there ELG T-shirts yet?
No, but I was at a conference there, an open source conference held by the OS Watch group, and some guy stood up and said, most important thing for open source products, you got to get your T-shirts and ball hats. That shows you're really here. I don't know, but no.
Have you had much contact with other people? The Moodle guys or any of the other open source people?
Not really. Not as much as we would like. We've got in touch with Moodle, but we were still at an early stage, so whether or not that put them off, I'm not sure. But not as much as I would like, actually. I think that's going to be one of the main tasks out with development over the next couple of months, is to really get these systems, talking to each other if we can, and sharing ideas. But that, in the end of the day, that's going to benefit the users, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many overlapping goals, and I know everyone sort of has their own project and passions, but I mean, your site itself kind of illustrates the benefits that come when people with overlapping goals connect.
Yeah, and I think there would be, as well as a lot of things that, especially some current content management systems, these types of environments, because ELG doesn't really have that sort of functionality, and I think that would be quite a nice addition. So yeah, I'm definitely going to be pursuing and seeing how that goes.
All right. Well, any final questions, Dave? Dave,
When are we going to find out about the logo contest?
That is the end of July.
End of July, yeah.
Yeah. In fact, the response has been pretty slow, so we need to really ramp up the attention if we can in this last week and a half. But we got your entry, Dave. So thanks
great.
for that. Yeah, no worries. Yeah, and I know, and we've got a new competition now that Ben announced at the beginning. Somebody has to come up with something what ELG stands for. So
perfect.
So there we go.
Yeah,
Well,
the first 2 letters aren't so bad. It's the 2 G's that get you into trouble.
Yeah, that's the killer. But we haven't been, and actually that is a good story. I was at a conference and some guy said, "What does ELG stand for?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't know." It's a small town, and but really he was like, "No, this is no use, man. You guys have got to come up with this real great Scottish mythological creature type big. Make it really exciting. You can't just sit there and go, well, I don't know." so yeah, we're gonna have to do better than a small town in Switzerland, I think.
Yeah, that's a good idea. And a mascot. What animal would an elg be?
Well, actually, funny you should say that, because somebody came onto the site, and apparently an elg is a moose in Danish.
There
kidding.
you go.
That's a great mascot.
A big moose. Yeah.
A big moose.
Yeah, I don't know if he's just winding us up or not, but apparently that's what he says. Elg is moose, Danish for moose. So anyway.
Well, thank you guys very, very much for joining us. It's been really great talking to you, and we will certainly look forward to staying tuned. And thank you also for making such a positive contribution to the world of educational technology.
No worries. Thanks for inviting us, and good luck with your EdTech site.
Thanks very much, and to everyone who will be tuning in and listening to this recording, thanks for listening. And the ELG guys, of course, can be reached at elggg.net. Stay tuned for our next webcast, which will be on Sunday at 2 p.m. GMT. I believe that's July 25th. So once again, thanks to everybody, and we'll catch you next time. And we are off.
Super. That was great, guys.
Well, thank you very much.
No, thanks. That was good.
Yeah, that was the most interesting and substantive show we've had.
By far.